Hey guys, Debs here bringing you a video on a somewhat new LEGO creation of mine. I somewhat finished it today, kind of, but I've already posted pictures of it on Flickr, and that is a mosaic I made of the Hieroglyph form of Link from the newest Zelda game that's coming out sometime in November called A Link Between Worlds. And A Link Between Worlds is a sequel to A Link to the Past, which is one of my favorite Zelda games, easily my favorite 2D Zelda game. And so I'm pretty excited for the sequel. And when I saw this picture in Game Informer, of course I already knew about the game beforehand. But when I saw this picture, I'm like, you know what? I think I could make that out of Legos. So I think I did a pretty good job. Obviously, it's facing the other way, which I'll kind of get into later on why that is. So when I said I finished this recently, as you can see, it's really reflecty for some reason, and Legos normally reflect quite a lot, but this especially, well, there's a piece of plexiglass over the actual Lego creation itself, because if I were to like hold this upside down, all the pieces would just fall out without this little plexiglass covering. And so I actually finished the frame which holds in the plexiglass today. And really, the only thing that holds it in are just these little tiles. As you can see, I'll try to get this on camera. See, there's just a little piece of plexiglass wedged in between the actual creation and the tiles holding it into place. And I think the frame looks pretty simple, but I think it looks pretty good. Just the four golden little pieces in the corners. Oh, you can't see the top corner. There you are. And I think it looks nice. Now, I went about building this in kind of a weird way. A way that I don't typically kind of build. So I had the picture just right here. And so I would just grab pieces, and then I'd start building this out on my table. And so it was just very loose. The very first version of it was just a completely loose version on my table. And then I got into building this kind of gray outline part until I eventually got it into a rectangular, like a solid rectangle that I could fit within a frame. And I built it on my table with Link facing to the left, like in this picture. But to get it into the frame, I had to put the frame around it, drag it onto a notebook, flip it, then put the back onto the frame, which changed the way Link was facing, so that's why it was facing to the right. Now, this isn't perfect. There's obviously a lot of gaps, or there's obviously going to be a lot of gaps, which I'll actually unscrew the camera and take a closer look. Alright, I've taken the camera off the tripod, so this is going to be a little bit shaky. I'm just going to show you kind of the gaps that are caused, just because you just can't make it that fitting. So there's a gap there, there's gaps everywhere, really. Now, the bottom half is pretty much gap-free. There's small little gaps in the legs, which is unfortunate. But really, the head has a lot of gaps. And, you know, I'm trying to get a lot of complex angles, so I expected there to be gaps, but, I mean, it's not really too bad. It's not too loose. Now, obviously, there's plexiglass above it, kind of holding it into place. But there are one or two gaps where I've actually used a sticker to cover it. And I just use cut Lego brand stickers, and that's something I don't normally do. But I thought in this case, since there's really no feasible way I could cover some gaps, I was just going to use some Lego stickers. So there's one right there. My camera's having trouble focusing, but it's just right here in between this part of the arm and that diagonal part of the arm. Then there's one right here, which covers up a little gap caused by the cheese. I was originally going to cover up this gap, but it kind of gave a weird kind of slanted look to the hand, and it didn't look very Lego-y, so I tried to remove it because I didn't want that slant. And then over here I have one because there's a pretty big gap there. Also, another problem you might notice is some of the pieces appear to be like sinking in more, like right there is like probably the biggest area, and there's some over here it appears to be sinking in. And that's because this actual mosaic is resting on top of studs, like a normal plate has studs, and all this is resting on top of studs. So some pieces are just kind of unfortunate enough, like right there, to kind of sink into the little gaps between the studs, which really sucks, but there's not really much I can do about it. Because that was really the only way I could think of making a somewhat thin frame and still having it meet up with only 3 plates in height. And, you know, it's not like a super thin frame, but I don't think it's super thick either. So I think it looks pretty nice. The colors might look a little weird with the plexiglass, or maybe it's just the lighting, since I'm only using this light coming through a window to my right. But I'll take off the plexiglass and see if it looks any different. Alright, as you can see, I've taken off the plexiglass, which it doesn't really majorly affect the colors, but I still thought you'd like to see it without the plexiglass, kind of up close. You can hear how it rattles around a bit. The face especially rattles around. So does the hat, which I think looks really good. Overall, I'm very happy with this build. I think it turned out really, really, really good. A lot better than I expected because, again, I was dealing with some pretty complex angles. So I'm really glad this turned out okay. Unfortunately, if I were to flip this over, like half of it would fall out. But I couldn't really avoid that. And also, some pieces you move might end up falling into some crevices. But the plexiglass ultimately keeps that from happening, or at least reduces it quite a bit. And I'm sorry for not uploading anything recently, but hopefully this will make up for it. And I really hope you enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys next time.